it leads to some questions which are more fundamental around why are we managing fisheries in this way. And if the listeners to this, viewers to this, if we can make available the strategy in there, it talks about some almost trash industry that needed to be reformed. That wasn't the case.
Hello, Eric. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
Not a problem. So let's start with vessel monitoring systems. So with the vessel monitoring systems, with the consultation, because you are in charge of Queensland Seafood Industry Association, so I would say that you would be among the many who are consulted on the implementation of vessel monitoring systems. How would you say that the Fisheries Queensland have done in regards to consultation?
Probably a couple of things. Depends what you define as consultation. So if you mean by consultation, people turn up and tell you what's going to happen, and there are certain things that are going to happen when the VMS gets rolled out, that's what consultation has been. It's been very targeted, so there aren't any open forums like there used to be with attracting lots of fishermen in one go, but selected people and groups have been picked out to have a discussion about the implementation of VMS. So we've never had the discussion with government about whether or not VMS was going to be a good thing. It was just coming, and it's part of the reform strategy process that they put out about a year ago. So, yeah, I don't think it's consultation. In fact, I know that it's not. How is it going? Well, fishermen have been railing against it since it's been touted, and now that it's coming into force, not only do we still not have a lot of key questions answered, there was still some debate about whether or not if you don't have one, as in a unit installed on your vessel, whether or not that is going to be legal from 1 January. So we've gone back to the minister and we put this letter out for public consumption that we want to know if we've ordered a unit and it hasn't come in, if we have our receipt, are we safe to keep working? Because as you'd be aware, Dane, the January is, December, January is a busy period for fishermen.
Yeah.
So if they're not on the water legally, we don't want to get fined because under the prospective changes to the legislation up here, you could be fined anywhere from $0 to, I think it's 130,000. It's 1,000 penalty units, and each penalty unit is roughly $132 and some change per unit. So they're not small fines. There's a feeling amongst the fleet that certain areas will be targeted and people will be made an example of. Whether that's going to happen, again, it's just a perception amongst some in industry. So, going back to the original question, have we been consulted? Probably no. Is VMS a good thing? No. We, as in one association of many that are up here, have changed our view on VMS. Wholly and solely we're against it. It would have been nice to have the conversation at the start of the reform process to find other ways to track fishermen, because it's not about what we're catching, because all VMS can tell you is where you've been, not how much you're catching or how you're catching. We've still got to fill out logbooks. And if you remember, and if you can make available the link, which I can send to you, which was a Queensland Country Hour report with a very senior person in the department, the words that came out were that boating and fisheries patrols is just looking for fishermen doing the wrong thing. So treating my industry as if the participants in my industry are all criminally engaged in some activity until they're caught with this new VMS system is not a good thing. It hasn't been great, mate. The level of stress. This is the other thing to think about beyond whether we've been consulted. The level of stress going through not just my organisation but fishermen across the state is not good. I get calls at all times of the night asking, well, where are we going with this and why do we have to do it? I don't necessarily always have the answer because I'm not in the mind of the minister or the government, but it leads to some questions which are more fundamental around why are we managing fisheries in this way. And if the listeners to this, viewers to this, if we can make available the strategy in there, it talks about some almost trash industry that needed to be reformed. That wasn't the case. We've got very sustainable fisheries like our colleagues in New South Wales and around the country. So the question in my mind is what community pushed for this reform? Because if you read the document, it talks about, the community was demanding reform of the fisheries. Well, which community? If you're talking about the green community, the NGOs, yeah, they push for it. If you're talking about some recreational fishing groups, yeah, they push for it. But the rest of the community, there was no community push for this. This was political. And, if government really doesn't want a commercial fishing industry, collect $100, $200 million and buy us out with some dignity, as opposed to pretending that you want fresh local seafood to be available to the public. The degree of, I'll see if I can use this word, bullshit that's coming out in terms of policy from our political leaders is fishermen can smell this stuff from a mile away, and they're not listening to us. They're not listening to multi-generational fishing families that are telling them this isn't going to work. So when VMS starts to fail on the water, they'll see what the problems are. And, it's not a good situation at the moment, Dan.
No, and they're certainly not listening to the consumer either. And I'm glad you mentioned the stress on the fishing families, because there are things happening at the moment through Tanya King, who's doing a lot of work around mental health, and she's got a report which hopefully will be available at some stage. But the amount of stress in the industry, not only Queensland, all around Australia, is immense. And for the politicians to just keep piling it on, they're not even taking a breath. Like, how long ago were the net-free zones? Not long enough. And they're just piling more and more on, more and more. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the consumer will have less choice to eat local seafood.
So you bring up the net-free zones and you talk about bad policy. When the former minister, Byrne, brought that in, he wasn't shy about telling industry or the public that it was politically driven. It still didn't stop. We got almost 30,000 signatures saying this needs to be reassessed. They wouldn't do it. The fishermen in those regions said, how about we do some resource sharing arrangements that are better than what we've got now to placate the rec groups up there. And it was rec groups, not individual recreational fishermen. They didn't want to hear that. So, yeah, it's been an ongoing nightmare, and no one has the magic silver bullet to stop political interference in our fisheries. And I think, just to go back to something you said before, I don't think some politicians do this with the intention of harming individual small business families. I think they don't know what they don't know, and so if you have to follow the party line, it's difficult to move away from that and say, well, hang on, can we unpack something that's happening here? Because when we put up the motion to disallow the net-free zones, I think it was at the end of 2015 from memory, there was a couple of active local members in the LNP that were pro-recreational fishing, because in their seats they've got a lot of recreational fisher people that put pressure on them to put up anti-commercial fishing policy. So I think it's still an education thing. I'm glad to see that we now have a national peak body. I'm glad to see that Seafood Industry Australia. I'm glad to see that the state bodies are doing more to educate the community, or the seafood consuming community more generally. But I think we have more work to do, and hopefully things like what we're doing here and other podcasting that people are doing, including ourselves, gets that message out. There really isn't an advocate for the seafood consumer. You would have thought, crazily enough, that government was the advocate for the seafood consumer, but I don't think that person or people exist.
No.
Because really, okay, we pay license fees up here, or different arrangements in different states, I guess, to access what we keep being told is a community resource. Great. We pay for our access, and we catch fish for the majority of people, because it is a majority, that either can't go recreationally fishing or don't want to go recreationally fishing. And that message kind of gets missed in some of this. And so if the general community gets anything out of what we're talking about today, it's when you think about why you're getting less access to fish or it's costing more money in the longer term, it's because we're being squeezed out of areas to commercially harvest what is a sustainable resource. And like I said, the reforms up here are not about the sustainability of the resource. It's how can we institute what we would consider, as in my association would consider, big brother tactics to make sure that they have put the squeeze on us in how we extract seafood product from the marine resource. So that I get that from their point of view, but from the consumer point of view, it just means less choice and less product. But one of the issues, one of the elephants in the room, and I'm happy to bring it up now if you want to have a listen to this, is the recreational impact on that marine resource. We don't really talk about that in any reform sense. I doubt quite strongly, and I'm happy to friendly wager with you, Dane, on the fact that I don't think bag limits are going to change up here. I think as soon as our current minister proposes changes to bag limits for recreational fishers, it'll be World War III. But what will get lost is, if you believe the boat ramp surveys that the department conducts, which I think statistically are a joke, but that's the best that they can do. So that's the best that they can do. There's 640,000+ recreational fishers supposedly in this state, probably 400,000 in the GBR and the rest in the southeast corner, and probably some chunk of that number in the Gulf. Do we really know what their impact is, the cumulative impact over time on that marine resource? No. Do they allow recreational fishermen of all ages to use nets in the water that are unpoliced? Yes. Up here, they're allowed to use cast, bait, and hook nets, and it's we're attacked for plying what is a highly regulated net fishery. Yet there is no discussion or even any statistics on the amount of illegal use of nets by recreationals up and down the coast. It's just assumed they're allowed to do it, and there's no discussion around it. So it's a really interesting time up here, because the politics of fishing up here at the moment is, let's vilify the net fishery, and once they destroy those fishing families, we then move on to the next target, which I think will be the trawl fishery.
Yeah.
And then whittle down the other two fisheries that don't seem to be getting too much more attention. So from what I can, I'll qualify this, what I can see from my members, and I can't speak for non-members obviously up here, is the degree of trust in the department is almost nil. The degree in trust in the reform process is almost nil. And for the information of people watching this, we're still running a survey which we've got 100 responses on, and the stats are, we asked 2 questions as part of the it was a follow-up survey. We did one in March, and we're following up now sort of 8 months after that initial one. We asked the same questions again, but we added 2, one of them being, have you considered leaving industry because of the reform process? About 80% of respondents said they'd considered it. I'm not saying 80% have left, but 80% of that 100 are considering it. That's not a good number. It's a very bad number.
Well, not when it's their primary career that they've lived and breathed forever. And I mean, to be thinking that when they're such a proud bunch, our fishers, you just got to wonder, what is this government policy doing to them?
I don't think they know or they care. But the other question was, with the introduction of VMS, have you thought about leaving? And 80% roughly have said they've considered dropping out. I've got some confirmation, albeit anecdotally, from meetings up and down the coast, and one particular meeting in Innisfail a couple of weeks back where about 10% of the room said they were exiting industry within weeks of this meeting. So if 10% is what's actually going out of the system, even that's not a good number.
No.
So is the reform going well? Well, government seems to be saying that all's well, nothing to see here, but they're not listening to us. And just a couple of days ago, we released a joint letter signed by us, the Gulf of Carpentaria Fishermen's Association and the Moreton Bay Seafood Industry Association, calling on a review of the department and how it's running the review process, the reform process, and just a review of the reform process itself. Where we get to on that call, we don't know. But you'd want to wonder if they don't engage with us on this. I don't know. I don't know where we go. I don't have answers to some of these questions, Dane.
Just to go back to what you were saying before about recreational fishing impact, this is, regardless of what the impact is, I mean, this is the problem with the lobbyists, and this is why recreational fishers really need to stand up, and they need to be telling politicians that they are not represented by these lobby groups. Because here's what happens. They use general terms when it comes to lobbying for these closures to commercial fishing, such as there's overfishing going on. They don't talk about particular fish stocks, although they have done in South Australia just recently. They're talking about the snapper stocks being in decline commercially. What they don't say is that the recreational fishing sector in South Australia catches many, many times more snapper than the commercial sector. So that in itself is a problem for recreational fishers, because once you get rid of the commercial fishers on the basis of sustainability, when the commercial fishers are fishing sustainably for particular fish stocks, you open the door to a massive lobby campaign to remove your rights to access the resource, because it's okay for one, it's okay for the other. So that's my point on that, because there, as you said, Eric, there is not enough information from the recreational sector on the impacts. I've already spoken in the Gippsland Lakes closure reaction about all of the plastic bags, all of the bait bags, the soft plastic lures. There are no environmental impact studies done on all of this stuff. So honestly, recreational fishers, there is no one in the commercial sector asking for recreational fishing to be closed down. All we are saying is tell these lobbyists that they need to get out of the politicians' ears, because they do not represent your interests, okay? Because they are doing you a massive disservice. Would you agree with that, Eric?
From a reg point of view, yeah, I think for all their faults, and this is the rec fishing groups, they've got that politicking right. They're obviously convinced the previous fisheries minister up here, before the introduction of the net-free zones, that it was a good idea because he'd get votes. Now, that's a one-off thing, and politics works in a cycle. So, yeah, I guess I would agree with most of that. I guess the bit that I'm, for context up here, at least from the Great Barrier Reef point of view, we get a lot of flack and pressure from that agency and green groups about we need to keep the Great Barrier Reef as clean and free of impacts as we can. So, okay, our fleets are shrinking, so the amount of potential damage that commercial fishermen can do, again, is, I think, minuscule compared to a group that is many, many times our size. We've actually gone to Grumper and asked the question, do you have any concerns with bait and cast nets? And they said, no, we don't. That's of interest to me. And again, I'd ask people to check out our Facebook site, the QSIA Facebook site, because we'll be talking about that issue in the future. But there seems to be a no-go zone when it comes to the policy discussion around the impacts of recreational fishing, because what's been the issue that's been conflated up here is that more recreational fishers equals more tourism income, more recreational fishers equals more happiness all around. That's not necessarily the case. No. Recreational fishing, in simple terms, and I'm not attacking the pastime hobby right of every Australian, because it is your right to access your resource, but it is a non-commercial activity. So if you catch fish for yourself, you're potentially taking away that access to somebody else, but that's not considered. Recreational fishing, there are groups, I think, in that sector that may go fishing once a year. So it's not them that we have a concern with. It's not the recreational fishing family that might go out once a month, because they're not the ones that drive these groups that are there fishing every day and almost, if not rivaling, the commercial catch. They're not selling this stuff to the public. We are. Yeah. And so this argument that, again, when I'll send you the link to that Country Hour program, the senior bureaucrat on that program makes it very clear it's a public resource. Well, it'd be nice to see that it was managed for the public, not for specific groups. Yeah. So yeah, look, it's an ongoing issue. We would like better relationships all round with the rec sector, because they seem to form group alliances with green groups, which is to their detriment, because as soon as we're out of the picture, where do you think they're going to aim the crosshairs of that gun next? It's not going to be us. It's going to be any take of marine animals from the marine system. And so, yeah, look, the bigger threat, I think, longer term policy wise for us, are the green groups in this country. That's been identified across lots of industries, and philosophically, I can understand that they have a point of view, but it's not everyone's point of view, and that's the whole thing here. That when you ask about how's the reform process going, well, one thing that is of interest to me is that every working group we have up here has a representative from an NGO. And when we've bothered to ask the question, well, why can't you have someone from the Queensland Department of Environment or National Parks? They're not the same as these other groups that represent the public interest when it comes to protecting the marine resource. Well, I thought government was there to protect the public's access to this, not unelected, ideologically driven groups that fundamentally don't want us fishing or want to see us reduced to such a point that they can walk away and work on the next campaign to try and save something or stop someone from doing something. And that's the whole thing here. When you talk representation, green groups do it well and they lobby well, and politicians seem to be listening. That's a problem for us, because all politicians of all stripes up here, I can't speak for New South Wales or anywhere else, seem to be deathly afraid of the green movement, and maybe they need to rethink just how prominent that green movement is.
Yeah, well, the green movement is very, very vocal at the moment, because the New South Wales Marine Estate Management Authority came out calling for a marine park, or 25 green zones from Newcastle to Wollongong. And the amazing thing is, we just had reform in New South Wales which absolutely decimated the industry, like beyond belief. We've lost that much seafood. Consumers going into shops and saying, why is seafood so expensive now? Why can't I buy this anymore? Why can't I buy that? They just don't know. And then this Marine Estate Management Authority came out with this marine park, and the only thing that stopped it, the only thing that overturned it, was the might of the recreational fishing lobby. And I mean, good on them, because there was no science behind these closures. So it shouldn't have happened. It was absolute rubbish, this proposal. But at the end of the day, you need to look at, well, how can they come in? How can this minister come in and put a broom through the commercial sector and no one says a word? And then you try and stomp on the recreational sector and their might is that big that the minister overturns it. And not only the minister, the Premier came out to announce that it was closed. It was gone. It was done. Don't attack me, recreational fishing sector. It is remarkable, because we don't just go out to catch seafood for ourselves. We are providing food, healthy food, for the nation. And yet we have no power in the political sphere. I hope that changes through all of the things that are being done in the industry today. I think we are getting better at it. I think we're getting far better at talking to communities, getting the message to the consumer. And I think they are becoming far more vocal now than they were before. So I hope there's good times ahead as far as lobbying is concerned. But is it going to be too late? I just don't know.
I would not want to be that pessimistic, but yeah, look, one thing that you raised there about where food producers, and that needs to be acknowledged, I think it comes down to, again, most politicians don't know or are unaware of what we do. And we as in industry up here at least, and maybe this is a national problem, I can't speak for my colleagues in the state and I won't do that, but at least from up here, we're not good self-promoters, and we're not good at getting the message across that we have some value in terms of the food that we harvest. It's really strange that we're not considered at the same level as land-based agriculture, and it just might be a function of when you go to the supermarket and you're looking at staples, chicken, beef, eggs. These are things you must have every day, or at least families purchase regularly, whereas seafood has a different place, so potentially in the mind of the consumer. Now, that said, maybe that's helped to push us away from the thinking of politicians. Now, I'm not saying all politicians. We've got some very good political advocates, and we have done in the past, that have bothered to school themselves up, and we've engaged with these people very well to educate them, but we need to do better in each of our respective parliaments to get the message across as to why we do what we do is important, and particularly because the majority of commercial fishing enterprises in this country, at least, are small businesses. Every state government and the national government says how much they want small businesses to thrive. If you think we have a industry business atmosphere up here in my industry that allows us to thrive, you've got to be kidding yourself. We've been under an investment warning in some fisheries for at least 15 years. So for those listening to this, an investment warning means that, let's say an investment warning was given in 2010 by way of example, any investments after that date may be considered null and void in terms of catch history on how much effort you put in your fishery, because the warning was made at a particular date. And so it's saying to anyone, if you invest after that date, you invest to your own peril. So why would a bank give you money to buy gear or get yourself kitted up to enter into a fishery where there have been investment warnings. And my understanding, and if this is incorrect, we can correct the record, but every one of our fisheries up here has an investment warning on it. This is not good. It's not understood, and it's not being discussed in any meaningful way in our working groups up here. So, it's a weird. We're at a weird time here, and if I can get anything across to people listening, is that these are real human beings that are stressed out. They've got families to feed, and how would you go waking up every day wondering whether or not you've got a job tomorrow? That sucks, and I wish I could do something about it, but I think it affects all of us that work in this space. I know it has yourself, because you're a commercial fisherman. I've seen in the faces of people that I know interstate as well as here. This is not, I don't like using the term, but and I've never quite known what it means, but it's un-Australian to do what's being done to this industry. People want and scream out for our product, yet if they understood the hurdles that are there for us to do the job that they want us to do, and I think we have plenty of social license to do what we do. They would never invest in us, and they would never want to be a commercial fisher. And that's probably the other bit to this, that whether people bring this up publicly or not, but I really get disheartened when I hear commercial fishers saying, "I don't want this for my son or daughter." That's not what we should be hearing. But
that's all I heard all my life. My mum and dad didn't want me to come into fishing. They couldn't stop me because it was in my blood.
It's not good. It's almost, to hear somebody say this in 2018 is an admission that there's something really wrong with this industry, and it's not us.
It's politics.
Which is why, if people ask me the question, well, why have you lost faith into the department? Well, if my members and industry more broadly are saying, I don't want to be here, nor do I want this for my family, there's something going on here, and it's not us. So, look, I like you, am looking forward to seeing the results of Dr. Tanya King's work, because it would be really good for past politicians, current rec fishing groups and ENGOs that have vilified and made us out to be criminals. When that report comes out, if they want to fix things, to stop at every port along the Queensland coast, find a commercial fisherman and shake their hand and say, I apologise for leading you to where you are, because the situation's not good. And, this isn't a laughing matter. We want help for people, but it would be nice if people gave this some consideration. And look, when you're a group that's against commercial fishing, all you see is numbers, not people. When government does what it does with its policy mechanics of any description, they're looking at numbers, not people. Yet they're quite happy to say, we want to work with industry. No, you're not working with industry. You're working with small businesses, and they're run by people with families. And I think that gets missed in the discussion. So why are things not rosy up here? It's for all those reasons. And look, I'm not saying it's unique to us. I know there's a lot of pain happening in New South Wales. I realise that Port Phillip lost a lot of good commercial fishermen for no good reason. Not good reason, for no reason. It's on the cards for the fishermen at Gippsland Lakes, and we hope it doesn't happen. So my call to industry would be, what the hell is going on here? Why is this continuing to happen?
Yeah.
I would have thought the net-free zones would have given people some wake-up call that this is not good. But now that it's happened twice now in Victoria, what does it need to happen 10 more times in South Australia or WA or the Northern Territory or some other state for somebody to pay attention to this? And I'm only one voice, mate. I'm talking from a Queensland perspective here, but I would be stupid and it would be disingenuous for me to say I'm not looking at what's happening in other states. I talk to people, I talk to my colleagues, and no one is saying that it's a rosy picture for this industry, and that shouldn't be, but it still is.
Yeah, that's right. So let's shift the focus for the final question.
Sure.
We've got Christmas coming up. Seafood is one of the most important parts of Christmas.
Yep.
What do you say to all the consumers out there?
What do I say? Buy local Queensland seafood, and then when you're finished eating it, buy some more, and then buy some more, and plan your holidays around seafood, because it helps commercial fishing families. And the demand for seafood this year, if I'm reading the tea leaves right from the retailers that will talk to me about what's happening, people will be pretty keen to get at every type of local seafood that we can provide. So, yeah, support your local seafood retailers, the specialty shops. In Queensland, for example, the Queensland, the Gold Coast Fishermen's Cooperative, where you can buy off the boats along the coast in all our key centres like Mackay, Rockhampton, Townsville, Cairns, Brisbane. There's somewhere to buy good local seafood and just show your support by going in there and buying some and then buying some more.
Yep, sounds good. And anyone that sees a fisherman out there, ask them how they're going.
That would be good.
Conversation.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, Eric, thank you so much for coming on. It's been great.
Thanks for having me. This was great. Appreciate it.
Yeah. I'll talk to you again soon.
Cheers, man.
Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and comment on my videos. If you would like to support commercial fishing media, you can do so at Patreon. $2 a month to show your support, $5 a month to show your support and get early access to content. Thanks again. I'll see you later.